Hey everyone, today I'm going to show you how to replace the clutch slave cylinder on a Honda S2000. I want to note that the clutch slave cylinder doesn't normally fail on the Honda S2000. I'm simply replacing mine because I just deleted the clutch delay valve, which I will cover in another video. The first thing you want to do is jack up the car and get it on jack stands. Once the car is on jack stands, you want to get underneath the car and locate the clutch slave cylinder, which should be attached to the driver's side of the transmission. Use a 14mm socket to loosen the banjo bolt until fluid starts to bleed, and let the fluid bleed completely into a drain pan. Once the fluid is done bleeding, you can completely loosen and remove the clutch fluid line. While removing the clutch fluid line, be sure not to lose the two crush washers attached to the banjo bolt. Use a 12mm socket or wrench to remove the two bolts securing the clutch slave cylinder to the transmission. Once the two bolts are removed, you should be able to pull the clutch slave cylinder out from inside of the dust boot. Note that it is possible for the clutch slave cylinder rod and boot to get stuck inside of the dust boot. If that happens, simply remove the dust boot to access the rest of the clutch slave cylinder. Before reinstalling the clutch slave cylinder, you will want to apply some lubricant to the rubber boot and the tip of the rod. This lubrication should make inserting the clutch slave cylinder into the dust boot buttery smooth. Once lubricated, reinstall the clutch slave cylinder straight into the dust boot and ensure that the tip of the rod sits in the cup of the clutch fork. Use one hand to compress the clutch slave cylinder and use another hand to thread the two bolts securing the clutch slave cylinder to the transmission. Then use a 12mm socket or wrench to tighten down the bolts. Torque them to 16 foot-pounds. Before reinstalling the clutch fluid line, you want to ensure that you have a crush washer on both sides of the clutch line. The shop manual says to use new crush washers, as you always should, but I have gotten away with reusing old crush washers. Use a 14mm socket to reinstall the banjo bolt, securing the clutch fluid line to the clutch slave cylinder. Torque the banjo bolt to 22 foot-pounds. Now you'll need to bleed all the air out of the clutch fluid line. Depending on how much time you have, you can do a two-person bleed or a single-person gravity bleed. If you need help bleeding your clutch fluid, you can check out my clutch fluid gravity bleed video, which will be linked down below. You'll want to bleed the fluid until the clutch pedal is nice and firm. Once the clutch fluid is bled, lower the car back down to the ground and go for a test drive. Make sure that the clutch pedal engagement feels normal and ensure there are no clutch fluid leaks. And that's it. If you liked this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and smash that subscribe button if you'd like to see more. As always, feel free to leave a comment down below with a video you'd like to see in the future.